morning, folks. I'm here today. We have Megan. Megan is the one who founded and is the director of BaptistAccountability.org. For those of you who are familiar with Mennonite Abuse Prevention's website, I believe it's pretty similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So say hi to Megan. Say hi, Megan.
Hello.
Do you have something you would like to share with us about you? Fun facts.
Well, I have 5 kids, as I told you. That's always something to lead with in my community.
Better you than me.
I know, I was going to say, I know in the Amish community, that's like small potatoes, but
no
in
fun.
evangelicalism, that's a lot of kids.
Fun fact about me.
Yeah.
I have 8 brothers, a half sister, 9 stepbrothers, and 5 stepsisters.
Whoa!
I have 1 child. Thank you.
Wow. You got me beat. I shouldn't have led with that.
No, you should have.
But I did have 5 C-sections. So
Ooh.
that was, yeah.
No.
That's pretty, I don't know. I don't think, I've not met anyone else that's had that many C-sections, so.
C-sections are hard on your body.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're really hard on your body.
Yeah. My body kind of fell apart after number 5. Yeah.
I can only imagine.
I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, but I think, like, from what they've said, like, just all the trauma of my whole life, like, kind of.
Yeah.
Took over and made my immune system go to pot, and then the Lyme took over. I probably had Lyme since I was a kid, but it took over.
You know that also, like, your body stores trauma?
Oh, yes.
Your body holds trauma.
Yes.
And it can manifest in different ways for different people. Like mine is, like, a lot of times I have eating problems, and I know I've shared with people before how I have, like, eating problems when I'm really, when trauma resurfaces.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what it does when you have Lyme's disease and all of that.
I just kind of fall apart. Like, I have terrible chronic fatigue. Like, I have times where I sleep 12 hours a day, and I still have to nap, and I'm still hardly able to function when I'm awake. So that's not all the time.
Wow. So how long ago did you get out of that type of environment?
Let's see. It's been 3 years now. It has been 3 years. So and I'm just now able to, like, I feel, really talk about things and not get super triggered. Like,
Wow.
Yeah, it really messed me up. I mean, I think I was just so many things. I went through so many different abusive church situations, And the final one, the final one was, we found out our pastor was a convicted child molester. And
what?
Yeah, that's my story. That's my most recent story. We were in a cult in college, then an abusive charismatic church, non-denominational, and then we went to the Southern Baptist Church, and we were at the Southern Baptist Church 12 years. And what happened was I was in church services towards the end. Well, the head pastor left, okay, and we all knew something was really wrong when he left, because he wouldn't have left. It was his dad's church before him. He loved that church. We were like, something's wrong. And so I started having panic attacks in church services, and I didn't know why. Like, full on panic attacks, and I'd have to walk out and just walk outside the whole service and let my kids with my husband, poor guy. And then we would go home, and I would just be screaming and crying in the car, and just couldn't even settle down. Like, we'd go home, he'd feed the kids lunch, I'd have to go upstairs and be alone. Like, I would have these, like, mental breakdowns, and I'm like, what? And I wouldn't come out of it till, like, Tuesday, and then we'd start it all over again the next Sunday. And I'm like, nothing, like, specific was happening that I saw at the time. It was just my body was picking up on the whatever was going on because of all the trauma I've been through in the past. So I was like the canary in the coal mine, And we ended up, I told Dom after like a month or two of that, I can't remember. I just said, I can't do this anymore. I cannot go back to this place. It's killing, like literally killing me. And you can go with the kids, but I'm just gonna have to sit out for a while. And I'm sure, I don't know, in the Amish community it was like this, but like not going to church is like, you don't do that. You don't not go to church unless you're on your deathbed, you know? So it was a big step for me to say something like that. And of course we were in where, you know, the husband rules the roost. And so he, you know, I always thought, well, he could pull the husband card and say, no, you're going to church, you know, but he didn't. He's a great guy. He said, nah, we're in this together. If you're leaving, we're all leaving. And he reached out to the church that day and said, we're stepping down. He was worship leader. I was nursery director. I said, we're just stepping down. Didn't even give them a reason. And only one pastor ever reached out to us and said, what's going on? And he told them, and then we never heard from anybody again. So then,
Wow.
I know, they didn't care. So
That's
what's wild to me. When often when you leave an evangelical church, well, that's how you know you're in a cult. If you leave and you're basically shunned, it was a cult. You know, if they just don't want to talk to you or any kind of, you know, it was a cult. So all that to say, after we were out a couple months, I was having a conversation, much like this, with a good friend. It wasn't live. Just on the
it wasn't live, just kind of like this. Yeah.
Just chit-chatting. And she went to that church with me. She was still going there. And I was just like, so do you guys ever figure out like what the heck's going on behind the scenes? Like, what is wrong there? She's like, no, I don't know, you know. And I had, well, actually before this conversation, I'd said, I have something that I should never say out loud, but it's just a gut instinct. And she said, well, tell me if you ever feel like saying it out loud. So I called her. Anyway, so as we're talking, I said, okay, so I don't have any proof of this. I don't have any reason to say this other than my gut.
Mm-hmm.
And my past experience. I said, I just wonder if there's some kind of, now I'm still in the evangelical, so excuse the language because I said sexual sin and I don't use that term anymore. But I said, do you think there's sexual sin behind this? Because this just feels like the cult, like something, it's just wrong. And it just makes me wonder because of the power issues. We knew there were some power issues going on. And she's like, oh, well, did you know about Don Foos's conviction? And I said,
what?
Conviction? Yeah. No, did not know about that. And so she kind of got real quiet and didn't want to share a whole lot because, you know, gossip. We were in that mode too. We were taught we shouldn't gossip. So
well,
I know.
Don't worry though. We'll have prayer chains.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So she said, yeah, we never got in trouble for gossip before it was against the pastors. Then it was big trouble, you know. So anyway, she just said, well, just do background checks on the pastors. She said, my husband and I did that a couple years ago and we found this out and you just need to do background checks. So we did on all the pastors. And while that takes a while, like a week, you know. So while we were waiting on that, we just started Googling, like right after that conversation. And the first thing that came up was Don Foos. Now he, at this time, is the head pastor. He had been the assistant pastor. But when that head pastor left, he became head pastor. He also was superintendent of the church-run school. They had a pre-K and kindergarten that was run by the church. And he was superintendent. And it came up, first thing, Don Foos, the revocation of his teaching license and from the Department of Education. And it had a statement there declaring him a danger to the children of the Commonwealth. And we're like, wait a minute, what?
So how is he now the superintendent?
How?
If his teaching license has been revoked and he's been deemed a danger to the children of the Commonwealth, that's the question that is mind-boggling to me. Like, how is he allowed to do that?
Yeah, and guess what? He is. There's nothing, it turned out, according to the investigation, nothing was illegal. But I'll get to that. Because, so Dom and I mean, it was over a period of time because we didn't know what to do. We didn't know how to handle this. We found Jimmy Hinton's information. So that really helped us to know kind of like what we should do. So I reported it to Childline, the Pennsylvania Childline. Nothing happened from that because I didn't have any proof of, anything other than he's a child molester. But that's not illegal. It's not illegal for a child molester to be a pastor or the superintendent of the school because it's religious school and Title IX stuff doesn't apply. So anyway.
Sounds like your state needs to have some updated laws about what convicted sex offenders can and can't do. That's what it sounds like.
That is. And that is what I am hoping to get into here eventually is helping with, legislation and that kind of thing. Have not gotten my foot in that door quite yet. But so they said, there's nothing they could do, but they took it down. So let's see. Dom called. We knew from Jimmy. Oh, so Nicole had said, well, but we heard no, nothing to worry about. We heard that it was a false accusation. So this was all false. He just pled no contest to spare his family, and from Jimmy, we knew, don't believe the child molester. Seems obvious, but it's not. And so we knew from Jimmy, call the courthouse, ask for the the police reports, the court documents, whatever. Dom actually got to talk to the parole officer that was in charge of that case. He was still there, even though the case was 20 years ago. And this is why he wasn't on any sex registries, because it was right months before Megan's Law went into effect. So he wasn't on any registries, any lists, anywhere. So
wow.
Yeah, and Megan's Law, we called them too. That was one of the first people we called, and they were flabbergasted. They were like, even though it happened before, like he should be in our system somewhere, and he wasn't. So somehow he fell through the cracks. I don't know. Anyway, all that to say, so we found out from the parole officer and all that, it was a big deal. It wasn't just, a misunderstanding. I tripped and bumped her breast was basically, what his story had been. No, it was above the waist, below the waist, clothes on, clothes off, and that's all in the USA Today story if you want all the gory details. But it was a big deal. And so we went to, well, at first, we're out of the church now, right? We're like, well, we said we're taking a break. We didn't tell them we were leaving forever for sure because we didn't know any of this. And Nicole, we told Nicole and her husband were basically like, well, we're gone. It's your church, so here's what we found, and we think this is wrong. So they already knew, but they believed his story. And then they, when we found all this other stuff out, they were like, oh my gosh, like what were we thinking, believing him and believing this? So they really did take it on then. And they went to the elders, who in our particular Southern Baptist church, the elders and the pastors are basically one and the same.
Yeah.
So they went, to them and said, this is what we found out, this is wrong. This needs to be dealt with. And they said, and they told them the Benningers know about this and they're not being quiet. And so their response was, whoa, wish they would have come to us first.
Of course. So that they could silence you some more because he's charismatic and he has a following, and like many abusers, many abusers are like this, not just him.
Oh, yes. And this is the story. So this, I will tell you beyond our USA Today story, because that barely scratched the surface, okay, of what was happening at that church. So so then I emailed them, actually. I emailed them although I used Dom's name because, you know, you have to be a man. And I said, I heard you wish we would have come to you. Why would we have come to you? You've been lying to us. Like, why would we trust you? You know? And if you have any questions about who we're talking to or why, please ask us. We'll be happy to tell you. So they did reach back and said, can we meet with you tomorrow? So we went and met with them, and Mark and Nicole, our friends, came along. It was the most unreal experience ever, of course.
What happened?
So there was the child molester pastor and 2 other pastors, I believe. Just 2. Yeah. And it was Dom and I and Mark and Nicole. So we just, they're like, started out like, well, what can we do? What do you need from us? What do you know, whatever. And I was like, ready. I was ready. I said, I don't need anything from you. You called us. I said, I already told you in my email what I thought, that you've betrayed us. I mean, this email was very long about, you betrayed us. Like, this is unreal. Who are you to say, even if you think he's safe, who are you to say that for my family and all these other people's families, And so they went into this whole, well, would you want your sins held up in front of the congregation for everyone to see? He's repented. God forgives everything, And Dom's like, if I stole money from a bank, I'd never get hired at a bank again. It's not about forgiveness, you're not going to be around kids anymore. Well,
Yes.
And then he got, Don Foose got all like, pity me. Oh, well, I've been wanting to quit so many times, but everybody tells me I should be here and that God needs me here. And I just stay because they tell me to. But this time I'm really leaving, because there had been incidents. We found out there had been quite a few incidents with kids and even a mentally handicapped woman that worked at the school.
So manipulation. Lies.
And then the one pastor who kept saying, so then he said, oh, and this is just because of Sandusky. If Sandusky hadn't happened, these laws wouldn't have changed, and we're not doing anything wrong. I'm like, but the laws did change, and you're breaking them,
The laws changed to reflect the values of the society that you live in.
To protect children, and you're thinking that's wrong. You're thinking, oh,
and you have a problem.
Sandusky.
You have a problem with it because the laws changed in order to better protect children. Like, children have the right to have a childhood where they're free from abuse. Like, that's a problem? How is that a problem?
Right? And then he went on to say, oh, you young folks. And I'm like, I'm 40 at the time, 43, I think, or 42. It's like, you young folks, you just think you're entitled to everyone's business these days because of social media. And in our day, people, their past was their past, and they didn't have to, share with everybody, and you feel entitled. And I'm like, what? No! Like, what is wrong with you? Okay, so it turns out this guy that's making all these arguments had his own past allegations of abuse, we found out. That did not make it into the USA Today story because of space. And he ended up going down from a post. I didn't do this thinking this was going to happen. I made a post on Twitter to Jennifer Lyle, her case was mentioned in the whole, SBC had this Caring Well conference where they were dealing with abuse. Mm-hmm. And Jennifer Lyle's case was one of the ones that was talked about by Rachel Denhollander. And so I was responding to her saying, great job. Like, I heard your story on the Caring mm-hmm. Well, and my story intersects with your story. Okay. Because this mm-hmm. particular pastor, I'm going to go ahead and name him, Dean Birch, was working at a missions organization also called Reaching and Teaching International, where he traveled the world training pastors. Now, it turns out Jennifer Lyle, who I'm telling you about, I'm commenting on her thing, her abuser founded that missions organization. So he was the founder. He was traveling with Dean Also, Don Foose traveled with that missions organization as a convicted child molester.
Do they not have any, like, is this, like, where's the oversight and accountability here? And why do they have these convicted child molesters in positions of power in your church? Like, what kind of,
3 of them traveling together.
Is this like an international, like, we support each other, we teach each other how to get away with it?
See,
I'm speculating.
I consider it very much a conspiracy. I think, like, people were so into this whole, like, QAnon garbage that there was no proof whatsoever for. There is a conspiracy for child molesters, and it is in the church. That is where it is. And you're deflecting because it's all the church people that are into the QAnon. The problem is in your house. It is right under your nose, and you want to ignore it and fantasize about, oh, the liberal left has a, pedophile ring. No, they don't. You do.
Can I explain to you, like, the parallels of that is, like, within Amish society, I almost feel like it's a paradise for predators. And the reason I say that is because when the church finds out that somebody is a pedophile, they will do like the 6 weeks of shunning, etc., but they don't actually do anything to prevent that perpetrator from having access to more children. And then often, like, for example, I went to an Amish abuse awareness conference over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And are you typing?
No.
What is that noise, though? I'm having a little bit of something in my ears.
I don't know.
But anyways,
a little bit of clicking, but not here. Is that better? I plugged my phone in. Maybe.
Yeah, that's so far. Oh yes, so much better. Thank you. But anyway, so I went to this conference, and like the message is really, we don't want our perpetrators to go to prison, and the victims, they have to, like, let it go and move on and bury it and forgive, and women should be silent. And so there's really no real tools for assisting victims. There's no real tools for even preventing access to future victims. And they allow these convicted sex offenders full access to children.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same in the evangelical church. They don't report it. They handle it in-house,
Yeah.
and then they move on. So, but the difference being, I guess yours stay in the same general community. Ours just move on to the next church where nobody knows. And the church before refuses to share it because of forgiveness and grace. And, we don't want to ruin his life. And so that's what happened. Don Foose went on to another church 20 minutes down the road and was preaching there. He wasn't the head pastor or anything, but he was preaching there. And we let them know, and they were upset that we let them know. And that was a whole nother story. I had to hold their
How dare you? How dare you?
I held their toes to the fire. I said, either you tell your congregation by such and such date, or I will. Because they refused to do it, even after we contacted the state association, clear up to the Todd Unzicker, who is the second-hand man to J.D. Greer, the president of the National Southern Baptist Convention. And nobody, they just said, all we can do is encourage them to tell, but we can't make them because every church is autonomous.
Wow.
So I just had to basically threaten him with, if you don't tell them, I will. And so he finally did. But this is why we did the database, because Don Foose had gone on to 2 churches after that without telling them anything about his background. He could just start over. They don't know, just like our church. And, I guess churches aren't, many churches, I think they're starting to, but many don't even do background checks. Let alone, if they do, they don't call their previous churches or, really vet these people. Because they're your friend. You knew them from seminary. Everybody knows them. He started out in this area. He's been here for, Yeah. It's just unreal. Oh, I can't hear you, Mary. I lost you. Can you hear me? I'm not sure. I don't have any sound.
Hello.
Okay, there we go. You're back. Not sure what happened.
Okay.
So
I'm not sure what happened either.
that's why we started the database, by the way, because at least there's something that people can enter people into
Right.
that will follow them.
Right. So the next question that I have for you is like, what has the response been to that?
I think fairly positive from what I've heard. We actually just did an interview for Vice, a reporter from Vice for this. I don't know when that's coming out, but she asked a similar question and she said, has anybody fired or hired anyone based on your database? And I said, not that anyone's ever told me, you know. People don't tell me. I'm hoping it's being used. I'm hoping it's, you know,
Wow.
people are, you know, finding things, but I don't know that for sure. And I also don't know. And Dom says it gets a good many hits. I mean, people are using it, but we don't know how well known it is. It needs to be better known. I mean, we need to market it better somehow, so that I'm looking into that, so that people actually know it exists and use it more. You know, if they're vetting their pastors or just going to a church, you know, are any of the pastors at this church, do they have allegations against them? Because we're doing allegations we're allowing people to enter allegations, not just convictions. So I'm losing you again. I don't know what's going on here. Let me turn my again. I can't hear you.
Is that better?
Yep, you're back again.
Oh, good times.
So yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I haven't. We've had a little bit of lashback. I mean, a lot of pastors, you know, get offended. This isn't every church, you know. And okay, but I'm betting it's a lot more than you think it is.
So, do you think, like, because for me, like, I like to think about it in the context of, like, is it something that's appropriate? Because, one, like, you're trying to bring some form of accountability, right? So you're representing accountability for people that are in positions of power and in the community, that the church is not being necessarily straightforward with their congregation and letting them know that this person is a convicted sex offender.
Right.
So do you feel like it helps them, helps people have access? Because I feel like it would help people have access to information. Like literally, if you're attending a Baptist church, or even like you meet somebody from a Baptist church, like you can go check Megan's website and you can see whether or not this person has abuse confirmed or allegations, right?
Right. And I do want to point out it's very incomplete. You know, obviously, the one thing I do worry about is that people will go there and think if someone's not on there, they're safe. You know, we only have in there what people put in. So I'm sure there's a lot of people missed. You know, I don't want it to be a false sense of security either.
Yes.
But I'm hoping that it at least helps. And what was I going to say? I was going somewhere. Oh, well, it just left me. But yeah, I'm hoping it helps some way. But, oh, I know what I was going to say. The legality of it, we're learning a lot more about. And so we knew I had researched a lot before we started this, and I knew we were, you know, within our rights and pretty safe. But we really do depend on, it's like grassroots effort. It's not just us researching and putting all this in. We can do that with convictions. We can research and put them in. With allegations, since it's our website, we cannot put allegations in. but third parties can. So,
Mm-hmm.
meaning if you have an allegation in your church and you want to speak up about it, you can enter that in. Now, I would also caution people, be truthful. You could get sued for putting something in, but for defamation, in order to be successfully sued for that, like they have to prove that you're lying and that you know that you're lying. So you're like willfully lying about this. Okay. So if you're being truthful to the best of your ability, you're
Don't
pretty
worry.
safe.
You're
Yeah.
going to be pretty safe.
Yeah. And you can get, like, if somebody was really out to get you, they could sue you. But the nice thing about that, and I know a lot of people that make their entries they want it known and they're telling the truth. And one thing that we've found from other advocates that's really interesting is if you get sued for something like that and you're telling the truth, it's almost your benefit, because when you have a lawsuit, there's discovery on both sides, meaning you get to see, your lawyer gets to subpoena all their documentation, all their computers, their evidence, witnesses. So really, you might get to take them down better if you get sued. But what usually ends up happening in every case we've heard of from advocates like Julianne Smith, Julie Boyce, I'm trying to think of who all else has been sued. There are quite a few big names that have been sued, and as soon as discovery happens and that perpetrator's dirty laundry starts coming out, they drop the suit. So that helped us not really be too scared about getting sued. I'm like, bring it.
That's pretty awesome.
Take you down.
That is pretty awesome. So would you do it again? Would you create this website again?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if my husband would answer the same.
But you would.
I would do it. I'd do it 1,000 times over. I'm ready to go much further with it now. We're going to be changing things up and doing a revamp so that it's even more scorched earth.
Nice.
So,
nice.
We've been really, it's interesting. It was interesting really going through this with a lawyer. We've been really careful about what we've allowed in, and trying to be sure everything was super credible. And found out that that's actually the worst thing we could do, that us trying to make a determination of credibility is what could actually get us in trouble. It would be better for us to just allow people to make their allegations. And we don't make any determination. And so the reader of the website would have to make the determination then, did this person enter proof? If they didn't, maybe this is not true, or not, maybe there's more to the story. So, it's just that kind of thing. Like, we were kind of surprised by that. We were trying to be so careful, but that actually wasn't to our advantage. And I feel also possibly wasn't to other people's advantage. Now, the big thing is, could there be false accusations put in and ruin some poor man's life? Yes, that could happen. But we will be. Now, the one thing we can do, we are allowed to take things out. If as the people who run the database, we're allowed to delete things. So, and we will. And we have had people reach out and say, this isn't true. This was proven in court that he was innocent. And we take it down, or to put a notation up that this case was proven innocent. We're not trying. We certainly are not trying to do that, and we will do whatever we can to keep that from happening. But also, if we're really going to protect people, we need to allow people to tell their stories and say what happened before the person is convicted. Because how many? I don't know. I know there's like statistics. Hardly anyone gets convicted. It's such a small percentage of people that actually are even reported, first of all. I can't even remember how many it's like 25%. I'm not good with statistics. It's low. There's a low percentage of cases of abuse that are even reported. And then out of those, it's a really small number that are ever convicted. So we feel very strongly that it needs to be allegations in there, not just convictions. So.
Wow. So I'm looking at the national child abuse statistics.
Oh, if you find it. I know there are statistics, and I always think
Yeah.
I'm like, Megan, you're in this business now. You got to memorize some statistics. I'm not a good numbers person.
This is interesting. This is just talking about the statistics. I'd have to go find it on a different time, and but it's talking about the statistics of like the amount of children that are sexually assaulted in the U.S.
Okay.
But hey, do you have anything else you would like to share?
I don't know. Nothing in particular. I mean, I could share forever because
Okay.
honestly, just even the stuff for that church could go on forever. It was just so ridiculous, the things that came out of that. But
yeah. So what would you like?
Abuse is everywhere.
Yeah. Is there anything you would like people to know if they're struggling and they're watching this and they're out there and they happen upon this?
Yeah, you're not alone. Not at all alone. And part of what we do also is talk to people. So and you don't have to be Baptist to talk to us. Right now, our database is limited to Baptist, but our advocacy work isn't. And our database might not always be limited to Baptist either. That's on the horizon too. But
that's exciting.
Yeah. We're always happy to talk to anyone. If you're having an issue with abuse in your church, just, it's church related, or your church is covering it, or your church is involved in any way. We do try to stick to, religious abuse, even spiritual. It doesn't have to be physical, sexual abuse. Spiritual, financial, any kind of abuse. We are here for you, and we'd be happy to talk to you. We just need someone to talk to, and we have a lot of resources we can pass on to people. So.
Oh my God! Thank you, Megan.
And please enter your predators into our database.
Yeah, thank you. And what I want to say to people is, not only are you not alone, but there are resources out there for you. Megan's organization is just one of them. Thank you so much, Megan, for sharing and putting all this information out there so people know what your website is about. I really hope that everybody has a wonderful, wonderful Memorial Day weekend. I appreciate all of you guys. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. Have a good Saturday.